In this week's video, I want to talk to you about this. This is a variable ND filter, and I want to show you how we can use this to turn the exposure triangle effectively into the exposure square. All will be revealed in this video. Welcome to the Photo Genius channel. This video is kindly sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a domain, bespoke website, or want to grow your business online, check out squarespace.com/photogenius. Hi, Paul here from Photo Genius. Welcome to my channel where I post regular photography tutorials, all designed to help you get more from your digital camera so you can take better photos. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Now, if you are a beginner and fairly new to photography, then there's every chance you're learning about three things: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, because we can use these three things to affect our camera's exposure, or in other words, how bright or dark our images are. Now, these three things are collectively known as the exposure triangle. But what if we had a fourth way of controlling light? Well, that now means that our exposure triangle is the exposure square. Now, that additional way of controlling light is an ND filter, and I've been using a 1 to 5 stop variable ND filter from Nissi. So what exactly is an ND filter? Well, ND stands for neutral density. Neutral because the color of the filter won't affect the color of the image, and D for density. This relates to how dark the filter is or how dense the filter is, and this affects how much light can pass through the filter. Filters are either circular and screw directly onto the front of the lens, but sometimes they're square or even rectangular, and then they slide into a filter holder which is also attached to the front of the lens. As an example, here we are taking a photo, the camera's set up, and note the light meter is balanced. Now, if we then add a 3-stop ND filter to the front of the lens, you will see the light meter now shows an underexposure of 3 stops. Now, you can compensate for this by making adjustments to the aperture, ISO, or shutter speed. In this example, reducing the shutter speed from 1/60th of a second down to 1/25th of a second returns us to a balanced exposure. So now we are using a significantly slower shutter speed. So neutral density filters are very popular when the intention is to slow the shutter down to create blur, such as with this image where I've used a 3-stop ND filter to reduce the light so I can slow the shutter down to 0.6 seconds. Now, a variable ND filter does exactly the same thing, but as the name suggests, you can actually vary how dense the filter is simply by rotating the filter itself. Variable ND filters are actually made up of 2 pieces of glass. With the filter attached to the lens, the outer piece of glass can be rotated. This particular filter has an ND range of between 1 and 5 stops. Now, for me, having a variable ND filter in my bag can be extremely useful because it gives me that extra level of control over my camera's exposure. Let me show you. To demonstrate this, let's say I want to blur the water. Now, I've already selected the lowest ISO and also closed the aperture down to f/22. Both of these are restricting light. So I'm having to select a slower shutter speed to compensate, and at 1/13th of a second I now have a balanced exposure. But what if I want to use an even slower shutter speed? Well, attaching the variable ND filter to the lens, and now I have a fourth way of controlling light. So now with the ND filter set to 5 stops, the reduction in light means I can now select a much slower shutter speed. Here, 1.6 seconds. Comparing these images side by side, it's clear to see how the slower shutter speed can be used to blur the water. Now, before I continue, I just want to take a moment to tell you all about our video sponsor, Squarespace, an all-in-one website building platform that you can use to build your brand or business online. Now, I'm using Squarespace to design a new website, and in no time at all, using their drag and drop system, I was able to build a landing page without the need to understand either coding or web design. Just like me, you can easily create a gallery to showcase your photography or set up an online store to sell images and prints. Plus, Squarespace make it really easy to fully customize the layout, colors and design to suit your individual style or brand and truly make it your own. To find out more, go to squarespace.com/photogenius for a free trial and use the offer code PHOTOGENIUS to save 10% off your first purchase. And I want to say a big thank you to Squarespace for kindly sponsoring this video and supporting the PhotoGenius channel, which helps me bring you more videos. So I've talked about how I may use a variable ND filter when taking photos, but now I want to take a moment to talk about the how and why ND filters are an absolutely essential bit of kit when creating videos. Now a good place to start is to compare these two video clips. Now look carefully at the spokes on the bike wheel and you will see that on the left everything looks very choppy and the blur is not very natural looking. Unlike the clip on the right, which has a more natural looking blur that is closer to how we perceive motion and blur with our own eyes. Now both of these clips are shot at a frame rate of 24p or 24 frames per second. This is industry standard and can help give your movies the cinematic Hollywood look and capture realistic looking blur when shooting movement. Now the reason these two clips look so different is down to the camera's shutter speed, which is different to frame rate. The recommendation is to set the camera's shutter speed to double the frame rate. So if I'm shooting at 24p or 24 frames a second, 2 times 24 is 48. Now the closest shutter speed I can get to that is 1/50th of a second, which is the speed used in this clip. Whereas the clip on the left was shot at 24p but a shutter speed of 1/160th of a second, which is too fast. And that explains why the footage looks so choppy and so unnatural. Take a look at this video of our dog Boo in action. Note the aperture is closed down to f/18 because it is a very bright morning and no filter is being used. But now using the variable ND filter set to 5 stops, the reduction in light means that I can now use a much larger aperture of f4. Now the big difference here is of course depth of field. Using the variable ND and a much larger aperture blurs the background and in my opinion creates a much more cinematic look. Using a variable ND filter simply allows for more control over exposure. Here I'm adjusting the filter from 1 to 5 stops. The shutter, aperture and ISO remain constant. Now for me, having a variable ND filter in my bag just gives me that little bit more flexibility. It's a tool that I can use to help improve my photos, but also help to improve the quality of the videos that I make for you guys here on YouTube. Remember, this particular filter is variable between 1 and 5 stops, but it is just the one filter. It's compact, it's light, perfect for traveling around with. Now, if you'd like to find out more about Nissi variable ND filters, you'll find a link in the description below this video. So I really hope you've enjoyed this week's photography tutorial. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. It helps the videos get noticed. That helps the channel grow. Special thank you to Squarespace for kindly sponsoring this video and supporting my channel. And also, of course, thank you to you for watching. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. New videos every single week. All that's left to do, of course, is to say, hope to see you again sometime soon. See ya. Bye.